Chapter 1. Lex Sinclair. In my annoyingly vivid memory, I could see through my 10-year-old eyes. Gabrielle, my best friend since birth. Literally. We were born on the same day, at the same hospital, in adjoining rooms. She was 5 minutes older, and she never let me forget it. Unfortunately, Gabby's twin sister, Annalise, was stillborn. So, I took the role of Gabby's sister instead. Her chocolate brown hair was rich against her amber skin from the sun shining bright through the window, lighting up the entire room. We were downstairs in my playroom, trying to decide if our Barbie should go on a cruise or a road trip. We had to do this quickly before Cameron, who completed our trio, arrived. He would endlessly complain about our taste in activity and take all of the fun out of it. We were discussing wardrobes when I heard my father's voice in the distance, causing my muscles to tense. He walked his business associate to the front door. Done with their important meeting, I knew our bodyguards would be returning to their posts. They didn't know the real danger was in the house, or maybe they did, but decided to look the other way. My father had been rather difficult for the past couple of years. He used to be nice, caring, even loving, but now he hated me. I had no idea why. I couldn't figure out exactly what I did to become such a horrible daughter. Being a waste of skin is just who I am, according to him. How could I fix that? How could I make him love me again if just being me was so unlovable? My mother said that he was sick, sometimes. Other times, she didn't say anything. She just let him yell, let him hit me, and lock me up in closets. She and I were strangers most days. He liked that. He didn't want me poisoning her against him. Still, even when she listened to him, even when she ignored my screams, even when she refused to look at me, even when she did exactly what he said to do, he hit her anyway. I didn't like it, but I didn't exactly feel sorry for her either. I didn't realize I had frozen in place until Gabby started snapping her fingers in front of me. I looked up at her, panic-stricken. Pink or black? She gave me a small but reassuring smile, showing me 2 tiny sweaters. She knew how bad he could be. She and Cameron knew everything. Her calm hazel eyes said that there was nothing to be afraid of. Everything would be all right. And I couldn't help but believe it. Black, I told her, starting to relax. But the relief was short-lived when I heard him coming closer. Without thinking, I grabbed Gabby and pulled her through the adjoining guest bathroom that had 2 doors, one that was connected to my room and another that led to the hallway. I pushed her out to the hallway and locked her out. Still in the bathroom, I heard him come into my room, slamming and locking the door behind him. I didn't even flinch when he started destroying things. "Where is it?" he sneered. "Where is it, you little thief?" I stepped just outside the bathroom door. I looked up at him in silence. His eyes had turned into the scarier version of the gorgeous emerald he hadn't passed down to me. I used to be jealous that I inherited my mother's amber brown eyes instead. Not now, as they were a deep, dark black that held no life and no remorse. I wouldn't win no matter what I said. He was only wearing a muscle shirt, and I could see beneath it, standing out in black, my name tattooed on his skin in beautiful calligraphy. Why couldn't he treat me like that? Like the name he wanted so perfectly on his chest? Then I thought, it's not just my name. It's her name too. My mother. I was a junior, though I refused to be called Catherine. Ugh. It made me sick to be tied to her in any more ways than I had to be. "Speak," he demanded. I didn't. I began to mumble. "Speak up," he snapped. "I didn't take anything, I swear." I stood up straight this time, knowing the worst still hadn't come. "Don't lie to me." He reached down and wrapped his hand around my neck, which seemed even more delicate sheathed in his rough palm. I kicked my legs and tried to pry myself from his grasp as he lifted me to face him, but my fingers were too weak and tiny in comparison to his strength to make any purchase. His face was somehow angry and calm at the same time. He closed his eyes with his jaw clenched, and I wish I knew what he was thinking. He could easily crush my windpipe, but he kept his hold loose so that I could still breathe. He was always careful about where he bruised me, and even though I could breathe, I couldn't make one single sound. Somewhere in the madness, I heard what had probably been happening since I locked her out. Gabrielle was banging on the door calling my name, but I knew she couldn't help me. Everyone was gone, including my mother, but even in dire straits, Gabrielle wouldn't betray me. She wouldn't run outside to Aiden, my bodyguard, and beg him to kick the door down and save me. She knew I didn't want anyone to know, and she would honor this request. So she would have to wait out my father's rage. Then again, I had a feeling desperate times called for desperate measures. She wouldn't tend to my pride when my life was on the line. Luckily, I heard even louder banging. Cameron. He was always coming to my rescue. He had this crazy notion that he could defeat the big bad wolf one day. Even though my father was 10 times his size, he was never afraid, not for a second. Honestly, when he was around, I forgot to be scared too. "Open this door right now!" Cameron's voice was insane with rage. "Stay away from her, you sick mother." He had been cursing like a sailor since he was 5. For some reason, he didn't finish his sentence. It was oddly quiet. He was probably picking the lock. He's been getting into things he shouldn't way past what I could remember. I was starting to feel dizzy. Then, slowly, I felt my throat getting wider, inch by inch, with a dry ache. My father's face softened completely. He threw me on the bed just as Cameron came running inside, Gabrielle close behind him. I clutched my stomach, trying not to throw up. "Clean this mess up." My father snarled at me and walked out the door, slamming it behind him. I stared out the door for a moment, confused. Most of the time, he was able to snap out of physically harming me when Cameron and Gabrielle stepped in, which made me wonder if hurting me was even connected to his illness at all. "Don't ever do that again." There was a mixture of anger and worry in Gabrielle's eyes as they both checked me for bruises or broken bones. "You okay?" Cameron looked back at the spot where my father stood just a second ago in disgust. "Yeah," I whispered, knowing I was safe now. The love and trust I had for Cameron and Gabrielle was a feeling not even my father could beat out of me. Bam. "Sorry, Miss Santos." "It's okay. I'll get them up later." "You okay?" I looked up from my desk and saw a pile of textbooks on the floor, and then Mallory Morgan standing in front of the class, waiting to start or continue her research paper. "You okay?" Josh Dixon, who I've known since kindergarten and was once thrown out of a closet by Cameron for kissing me in the 7th grade, repeated, with his thick dark brows drawn in concern. I nodded, trying to focus on Mallory and get the memory of 10-year-old me out of my head. But then she began talking about gun violence. My father was a gun enthusiast. The only thing we ever bonded over was my ability to take a gun apart and put it back together in under a minute. Aiden, my jack-of-all-trades bodyguard, agent, business partner, and father figure all rolled into one, not only taught me that, but how to be a great marksman. I won many first-place tournaments. I turned away and saw the new boy beside me, Kenneth, who seemed amused by Mallory's continuing rant about the hazards of weaponry. Technically, he wasn't new. I've just never seen him here before, and I knew everyone at this school. Most of us grew up together. Plus, I've been gone for the past 7 months. I wondered where Cameron was and what he was doing. Unlike every other year, I didn't have his itinerary. I had to stop there. Thinking about him just made me more jumbled than I already was. I tried to ignore the ache in my chest that simply missed him. I've known him all of my life, and now it seemed that I didn't know him at all. All I could do was guess his motives, because I didn't have the courage to ask. I hid my earbuds with my thankfully thick hair and turned on my playlist, putting my head down. I didn't want to think about Cam anymore. I was getting sad, and I'd deny it if he asked. All I really wanted was for him to tell me everything was going to be okay. I needed him, and he wouldn't come. I just didn't have the gumption to say it aloud. It was hard for me to get my head wrapped around our new situation. This was something I just wasn't accustomed to. Cameron had never not been in my life before. The night Gabrielle and I were being born, Cameron was in the waiting room with his parents, only a few months older than we were. He had always been there, and now he wasn't. I guess I couldn't completely make it into something he had done by choice. All three of our fathers have been best friends since the 4th grade. We were forced to be around each other every second of the day since we were in diapers. It was a miracle that we didn't get sick of one another, but formed an unbreakable bond of love and trust instead. I sighed to myself. I guess all of that love and trust went straight down the toilet. I didn't blame him, though. I couldn't. I cut off my music, looking up at Kenneth, who was leaning over to tell me something. Overhearing Josh beside me, who was riled up about some sports thing. Are you seriously trying to take it back there? Over his entire career, Kobe never had a season in which his PER or VORP matched Wade's best year. Josh exclaimed with too much ferocity. Even as a former head cheerleader, I could never understand how someone could care so much about a stupid game. I just liked to parade around in my cheer outfit. I would have gotten up, but I was stuck in my seat. Kenneth's face was so close to me, I couldn't see anything else. I could even smell a hint of peppermint on his breath. Time to go. Personal space. Well, I would be thinking that if I weren't completely lost in his eyes, that weren't just looking at me or through me, but to me somehow. It was an enigma that canceled every other thought. Miss Santos coughed on the other side of the room. The sound interrupted the brief silence and startled me into standing and grabbing my things. Thank you. His eyes watched me kindly. You're welcome. When I turned for the door, I noticed Nikki and Avery waiting for me. This was my first day back, in my first class of the day, and they were my welcome committee. I'm surprised they even wanted to talk to me. I didn't even tell them I was back. Vanessa did. The cheer squad, which consisted of a few of my closest friends, Nikki, Avery, Sunny, and Devin. The rest of the girls were superficial elitists who wanted to be popular by association, which is why the new team captain and my old frenemy Blake was able to buy their votes. Avery told me this when they stopped by the house yesterday after Vanessa called them. My predecessor should have obviously been Nikki. Well, our predecessor. Gabrielle and I were co-captains. Avery, who stayed in everyone's business, handed me a coffee I hadn't noticed she was holding. Your usual, she gave me a tentative smile. We're having our annual first day meeting and we couldn't do it without you, Nikki added. They were doing that thing. They did it at the house too. All of the girls, pretending that I wasn't different, like I wasn't a shell of who I used to be. I understand what they were trying to do. They were being real friends, supporting me when I needed them the most, unlike what I did when I ran away. But I didn't want to pretend like everything was back to normal. I took the caramel frap from her hand. Thanks. I started walking alongside them down the hallway while Avery prattled off all of the things I missed. I tried to play it cool when she brought up Cameron's name. Apparently, he had been getting into more trouble than usual. I actually tried to pay very close attention to everything she said so my mind wouldn't drift off into dark places. Per usual, there was some party everyone was excited about. I don't know why. Someone was always throwing some big bash for no reason, and next week there would be yet another at Gavin's house, the school's star wide receiver, which meant Cameron, the ex-star quarterback, was going to be there as well. That thought caused my stomach to flip. According to Avery, even though he quit, the team still looks to him as the captain. They better not pull that crap with me, I think, as I walked with them to said team meeting. Crap. I hadn't been to a party since last November. She didn't have to say anything. I could feel Avery itching to ask me if I wanted to go, and her readying the disappointment that would ooze out of her if I declined. Are you gonna go? Nikki slapped her arm. Avery. Ow, you were thinking the same thing and you know it. Avery rubbed her arm. By the way, get some lotion, Papa Proud. Nikki cracked a smile. Derek is the one who needs the lotion, Ice Queen. You know I don't like him like that. Lex is the one who makes all the boys go crazy, which is why she should come to the party. I shrugged. Sure. So she wouldn't press it any further. She shot her arm out. Yes. See, Nick, closed mouths don't get fed. I was so focused on whatever tidbits I could get out of Avery that I hadn't realized where we had arrived. We were only a few feet away from the double wooden doors of the gym. My feet slowed to a stop as they continued. I have to make a quick call. I'll be in. I tried to sound as reassuring as possible. They looked back with a smile. Okay, Nikki responded, opening the door, and Avery stepped in. When the door closed behind Nikki, I just stood there. I was so close, I could touch the door. I tried to move, but I was frozen as I was at the funeral. I couldn't walk through the threshold. Cameron had to pull me through. I felt like a block of ice then, and I was one now. This gym used to be one of the few happy places I had in this life. Gabrielle and I came up with the designs for the new and improved cheerleading outfits. We created all of the cheers, moves, and everything. I couldn't go in there without her. I wanted to run, but I couldn't make a scene. Showing weakness was something that I did not tolerate. I lost control at the funeral that day, but never again. I closed my eyes, taking in a deep breath. Being a team player freak you out too? I heard a familiar voice again. Kenneth's. I didn't respond, trying to reel in my tears. I opened my eyes but didn't turn to him, who was standing beside me, mirroring my stance, facing the doors. You know, you're all anyone could talk about when school started. Your reputation precedes you. I'm sure it did, but the billionaire heiress that could get away with whatever she wanted no longer existed. Everything I wanted was discontinued, and a cheap knockoff would never do. I could feel him looking at me now. Are you happy to be back? No, but I'll make it believable. I said the words before they could be screened in my head. I wasn't too excited about it when I moved here either. Look on the bright side. We only have one more year and then we are in charge of our lives. We can do whatever we want. Until then, pretending isn't so bad. Yes, it is. I don't know why I was telling him the truth, but it was refreshing. We'll figure a way out, though. His voice was almost desperate, like he was holding on to his own words as much as I was. We have to. I turned to him and his eyes locked onto mine. How can you be so sure? He gave me a half grin, one dimple popping into his left chocolate cheek. I'm a fighter, and something tells me that you are too. Except I wasn't. Not anymore. I looked into his light brown eyes that had tiny gold specks to see if he, a stranger, could notice that I was different. Maybe he could see that this was all one facade. Maybe he could tell that this was my last year. Maybe he knew about my list. Maybe he was trying to tell me to hold on. Gray, get in here now. We both turned to Coach Helm, who had his lips in a hard line, pointing his thumb behind him, gesturing for Kenneth to get in the locker room. You don't have time to fraternize with pretty girls. I looked around and noticed that everyone had cleared the halls. I hadn't even heard the final bell ring. At least it didn't register. I looked back at those double doors to the gym. I walked away quickly before someone came out and found me.